Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last couple of years. And if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of IPAs, but notably the New England Hazy IPAs. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases at the time of filming. It's a style that I don't believe I've tried from this brewery so far, if memory serves me correctly, and it's also a style that has a little bit of a unique popularity here in Japan. There's quite a few breweries brewing this kind of beer, which is really interesting, so maybe it just suits the Japanese palate, I guess. But yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit north of me here in Osaka up to Shizuoka Prefecture. We're going to go to the Mochimune area, which is quite close to Shizuoka City, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful West Coast Brewing. So this particular beer is called Mononoke Dance. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and this one is being described as a sour hazy double IPA. So yeah, we've had many hazy IPAs from West Coast Brewing so far, but never anything that's been listed as a sour IPA. So yeah, I think this one could be really quite interesting. If memory serves me correctly, this is one of the beers that I picked up at the Dark Lab bar that West Coast Brewing have here in Osaka. And yeah, it's one of a couple that I've reviewed from West Coast Brewing during this particular trip to Japan, and I'm sure there will be more in the future at some point. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. An 8.5% sour hazy double IPA from the wonderful West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from West Coast Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future, but there's all the usual social media down there if you want to see more reviews. Do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly, of course, because I'm over here in Japan visiting my little boy quite regularly. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about West Coast Brewing once again then. So, West Coast Brewing, as I mentioned to you already, are based in Mochimune City, I believe, Mochimune District, near Shizuoka City in Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan, right next to Mount Fuji. But the brewery was originally founded back in 2019 by Derek Baston, who comes from Seattle in Washington in the US Pacific Northwest, and he had previously worked as an architect. So Derek originally came to Shizuoka back in 2003, and he would often visit different breweries during his trips home, and he said that he'd always been inspired by the craftsmanship that went into the West Coast American beers, and he wanted to bring some of that West Coast craft beer culture back to Japan with him, because he felt there wasn't that many breweries in Japan doing this at the time. So apparently the idea to found his own brewery can be traced back to 2014 when he designed the Shizuoka distillery for Gaiaflow, who have facilities all over the place actually. But this was the first real look that he had inside of the brewing and distilling world, and it inspired him to visit other breweries and distilleries and talk to those inside the industry. And apparently doing this made the whole process of starting his own brewery seem a lot less daunting. So he founded a bar in Shizuoka called 12 to kind of test the water and see if the types of beer that he wanted to brew would be a hit, and it soon became quite clear that they would be. So they then found an abandoned, they found a premises to brew in an abandoned tuna processing factory in the Mochimune marina, and they renovated it and converted it into a brewery. So the brewery itself is equipped with a 10 BBL system, which is around 1600 litres per brew. They've got 10 fermentation vessels in there and 2 bright beer tanks, although I believe it might have been expanded since I made these notes, and they produce somewhere between 12 and 20,000 litres of beer per month. They've got 3 brewers, Satoshi Niwa, who's from Japan, he's the brewing manager, and they've got Cedric Mel from France and Grant Scholler also from the US. But the brewery's mascot is the Hop Dude, and you'll find him on pretty much all of the West Coast Brewing labels in some form, and this artwork is designed by Simon Henshaw, who I believe is from Manchester in England, and he does artwork for another brewery as well, but I'm honestly trying to remember who it is. But over the first few years they focused mainly on brewing different kinds of IPAs, notably the New England Hazies. This is really kind of where they made their name, which is kind of interesting if you like, because they're called West Coast Brewing and they're inspired by the West Coast, but they do some very good West Coast IPAs as well, I would hasten to add. But they're also still kind of working a lot on their barrel program as well. They've got some very interesting beers in that, and I do have some of those that you will see appear on the channel at some point in the fairly near future. But they've also been opening up a number of bars and tap rooms and things like this. This includes the original 12 Izakaya, Bao, which is a gyoza restaurant, number 3, which is a bottle shop. These can all be found in Shizuoka City, and they've got the Oasis Bar in Hamamatsu, and Umeda 1, Umeda 1 and Dark Lab, which can be found here in Osaka. And from what I understand, they are looking to open up another place in Tokyo quite soon as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But as of December 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 410 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about West Coast Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Untappd, Beer Advocate and Rate Beer pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So like I mentioned to you earlier, this one is called Mononoke Dance, comes in at 8.5% ABV. They're describing it as a sour hazy IPA, but this one has also been brewed in collaboration with Denki Groove, who I believe are also from Shizuoka, because this beer is part of their kind of, I think they called it the Super Shizuoka collaboration series. But yeah, half-litre can, this one. I think it cost me in the region of like 1,400 yen when I bought it, so that is, oh, what's that going to be? That's going to be about £7 sterling, something like that. 70 Hong Kong dollars, maybe about 8 euros, 80 Swedish kroner. What would that be, like $9 American, something like that. So that gives you a rough idea of the price range of this one. Half-litre can, which I think I said. But yeah, there wasn't any details on what hops or anything they had used in this one. But yeah, nice artwork on this one. The Denki Groove Group are only 2 members from what I understand, so I'm guessing that these things on the label are just the 2 members kind of hop-dudified, if we can call it that. So yeah, nice stuff I have to say. But let's crack this one open and see how we go. I'm really curious about this, my first sour IPA from West Coast Brewing. But like I say, this is a style of beer that seems to be fairly popular in Japan. Vertere, and who's the other one? There's Vertere and one of the other breweries do these beers fairly regularly, actually. That's quite nice. There we are. Looks quite interesting. So at the moment we've got about 80% of this beer out and into the glass, and yeah, it looks interesting. So before the head disappears, we can see that it's poured with about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. Some medium bubbles on the surface of the liquid there, a few fluffy ones kind of going further up. But yeah, the head is just kind of fading away to be a nice kind of thin layer at the moment. Colour wise, this is quite interesting. The colour of this one and just the appearance of it generally is more in line with kind of the more West Coast IPAs that we've had from West Coast Brewing in the past. It's not super hazy, but yeah, a nice kind of rich golden colour, this one. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But you don't often have to care about that with different kinds of IPAs, although some sour IPAs, quite a few of them actually, do have some kind of adjunct in them, so just be aware of that. The beer does have a little bit of a naturally hazy kind of character to it. You can see if I put my hand behind the glass there, but it's not really kind of soupy and gloopy as you would expect from a full New England IPA. This one's appearance is more like one of these more kind of generic American IPAs, if you like. One or two bits of carbonation sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but all in all it looks like a kind of modern IPA, if we can call it that. Not too surprising in terms of its appearance. This one, it kind of looks like the other sour IPAs that I've had from Vertere, and that's really going to annoy me now. There is one of the other breweries that I had a sour IPA from quite recently, but oh, Tutopia, that's the other one. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, all in all, a nice looking beer, this one. So I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of the beer. Let's have a wee look at the aroma then, and just see how we go. A little chilly tonight actually, but yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So this one is quite yeah, this really, you know, as soon as you come into this one, it does come across as being pretty like citricy, you know, that kind of thing you would get from a proper sour beer yeast. That comes out of this beer right away, just be aware of that. So yeah, aroma wise, this beer is really quite interesting, I have to say that. Yeah, that's a very, they're saying a sour hazy IPA. I expected something more, knowing West Coast Brewing, I actually expected something a little bit more, you know, New England hazy IPA type leaning, but this is really quite different actually, and having had quite a few beers from these guys, this is quite exciting. It's always nice to try different styles from breweries that you know quite well. So yeah, this one, it really leans toward that sour beer side of things, that kind of modern sour beer side of things. Yeah, it reminds me of quite a few of the kind of more the Holy Goat golden ales that I had from back in the motherland of Scotland. But yeah, let's just try and break this aroma down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer, it's like a combination of kind of fresh white bready bread crust, but also kind of crackery, and it's got a sort of sweetness to that as well. It reminds me a bit of Iron Brew actually, but Iron Brew's not really a good descriptor for yeah, Iron Brew's not really a good descriptor for anyone that's not Scottish, to be honest with you. It's so you've got that cracker and that white bready bread crust sort of thing, then this Iron Brew type quality to it, maybe like a sort of like a bubblegum soda type thing. There's a wee bit of that going on. There's a real like bubblegum soda, creams, maybe slightly cream soda type sweetness there, but you've got the bready character, so there's a wee bit of like a sweet brown bread and a sweet white bread in this one. This is really unusual actually. I've not had a beer quite like this in a wee while, or the one that smells like this, at least I've not tasted it yet. So yeah, you've got the brown bread and the white bread in there, and a smooth sort of wheaty type thing to this one. Yeah, so there's a nice kind of wheaty type character in there, and then on top of that you can smell a little bit of an oaty note actually as well, and then there's Werther's Original. Yeah, there's Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch. There's a wee bit of kind of, yeah, there's Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, a wee bit of biscuity character as well, and yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really, really quite nice. Interesting malt base though. I really did not expect the combination of yeasty and malty things that's going on here. At the back of the nose, you have a kind of yeah, in the back of the nose, you've got a good little bit of yeasty character to this one, which is a little bit more. It's a more kind of sweet brown bready. Yeah, sweet brown bready, crackery, almost slightly woody. Some really, really interesting stuff going on in this in the malt base here. So yeah, just pay attention to that a wee bit. I think this is a really, really interesting smelling beer, in fact, and quite different from what I've had from from West Coast Brewing before. I like it when you get things like this that make you think a wee bit to try and figure out what's going on. So yeah, interesting stuff in the malt base, and the yeasty character too. It's like a sweet brown bready, almost more slightly farmhousey character that's coming from the yeast here, but very much it's got this very much kind of like bubblegummy, cream soda type sweetness to the malt base as well. In terms of the green component and the hopping with this one, I'd be very curious to see the brew sheet of this beer and see exactly what they've done. But yeah, the green component of this one is quite soft, like a New England IPA would be. I mean, there's a little bit of earthiness in there, a wee bit of floral character, but mostly it's kind of grassy for me and quite oily as well, actually. But yeah, the green component doesn't come across as being overly pungent, so I'm pretty sure mainly late edition and dry hopping with this beer. If there was early edition hopping there, of course, you'd have that big, deep, dank kind of pine resiny note to it. But yeah, in terms of the fruity side of this beer, it's, I think it's kind of like, I'm getting a lot of like pear and apricot out of this one. Some of that's definitely coming from the yeast, but from the hops, yeah, there's not too much. There's maybe a slight light tangerine orange or something like that, but not too much for me. It's mostly pear, apricot, maybe a bit of pineapple. Doesn't seem juicy enough. Maybe a bit of mango, but doesn't seem quite juicy enough. Yeah, it doesn't seem quite juicy enough, to be honest. But yeah, the way everything goes together in this one, I think is really, really nice. Yeah, all in all, a really, really interesting beer, this one. So yeah, aroma wise, it certainly made me think. And after 4,000 odd beer reviews, you want beers that are going to make you do this. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma of this one. As I always say though, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beers that you drink, because that's always half the experience when it comes to whiskey and beer and Japanese sake and stuff like that. So yeah, let's taste this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Mononoke Dance, brewed by West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan, in collaboration with Denki Groove. So yeah, I'll need to re-listen to the music after this video and see what it's like. But yeah, an 8.5% sour hazy double IPA, this one. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kanpai. That's really nice. It's really quite light and very drinkable, to be honest, as well. Yeah, I mean, it's quite different from the other. Let me just see, does this beer get a little bit more hazy as we do the rest of the can? Not really, no. Okay. So yeah, this you know, I can see why Japanese people would like this particular style of beer, the sour IPA, because the kind of vibe that it has, it's a little bit like some of the kind of yuzu and sudachi sauces and things like that is used in a number of Japanese dishes. So yeah, I can see why the sour IPA is a style that Japanese people would enjoy. And yeah, it's not a style that all that many other breweries do, to be honest with you, as I said. Um, but yeah, it's definitely worth having a go at some of these if you get the chance. And obviously West Coast Brewing have shown me that with this one they can do a good one. Yeah, Vertere and Totopia are quite well known breweries here in Japan that are doing this style regularly, and of course there are others too. But yeah, still takes me a wee bit of time to get my head around exactly what's going on with this beer, but it's nice. It's definitely enjoyable. It's an oily and kind of slick kind of thing, I would say. But when they're saying it's a sour hazy double IPA, I actually, with it be just maybe it's just a stereotype or a perception I have about West Coast Brewing, but I would have expected something slightly more hazy than this. This comes across a little bit more like a straight up sour IPA rather than being a straight up sour hazy, rather than being a sour hazy IPA, I should say. This kind of it does remind me of a few of the things that I've had from the likes of from Vault City and Holy Goat Brewing back in Scotland. So yeah, this is more of a straight up sour IPA rather than being a hazy IPA. The ones that I've had from Totopia and Vertere have been a bit more hazy, if you like. Yeah. But let's just break this one down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. I will say, I've had to take a few sips of this one just to kind of figure out where the flavours are. This is one of these beers where it comes in very oily and very slick, and the flavour sort of evolves out of the aftertaste. So yeah, if we go to that middle third of the palate then, the backbone of the beer is that kind of fresh, white bready bread crust. Maybe more of a brown bready bread crust into the aftertaste. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a more woody. Yeah, you get a little bit more of a kind of woody character coming out of this one. But then yeah, Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of that. Yeah, there's some Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of that. You've got a little bit of the brown bread kind of comes in on top of that, and the brown bready layer almost feels kind of quite wet and almost kind of squishy in a way. And then yeah, you've got the white bready notes sitting on top of that as well, and the bready notes kind of come across as I would have expected from the aroma. Like, it feels as if the bread has been soaked in like cream soda, or we've got bubblegum aid, I'm sure, is the one that bars do in Scotland. It's got this kind of it's Iron Brew. It really does remind me of Iron Brew in a way. So yeah, there's quite a little bit of that going on in this one. The bready character's got this almost kind of bubblegummy type sugary character inside it. I think that's a fair way to describe it. But yeah, above the white bready layer, you can feel there's maybe a layer of like a slight biscuity layer, but it's not quite as dry as biscuit. In fact, it's more got the kind of consistency of like butter candy, butterscotch, but more the flavour of biscuit. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel you've got that that little circle there, which is mainly Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, and that is of course going to be the alcohol side of the beer. I think that kind of layer I was just talking about is probably formed by a mixture of the wheat and the oats in the beer. But yeah, the middle third of your palate in this one's quite interesting, I have to say. So I'm not sure what else we can say about the middle third of the palate. Let's go to the back third of your palate then and talk about the yeasty side of things. I've often said Sweeter flavours will come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build-up in there. So you get the brown bread in the base and the more white bready character on top. The base of that back third of your palate is a little bit more, the base of that back third of your palate is a little bit more kind of like brown bready bread crust, a bit more grainy. You've got the cracker. The brown bready layer feels a little bit taller. The white bready layer feels a little bit taller, a bit drier, and actually more like kind of regular bread rather than that iron brew soaked bread that I was talking about. And then as you know, over the top of that, you get a little bit of a kind of biscuity and Werther's original character just kind of creeping in there. And on top of everything else, you start to get the yeasty side of things coming out of this beer. So yeah, for me, the yeasty side of this beer, at its core, it's got a little bit more of a kind of sweet, dense, brown bready character to it. Sweet, dense brown bread. Then around the edge, it's got that more mix of white and brown iron brew soaked bread, and then you've got that nice little bit of kind of bread crusty character around the very edge. But definitely, the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really interesting in this one. So I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. I would say you get a little bit of just more crackery and woody sort of stuff out of this beer into the aftertaste. The green component of this one, I'm curious about because it's very, very smooth. There's maybe a little bit of an almost noble type earthiness in the back corners of your palate. As you move further forward, it's a little bit more kind of, I'd say it's a little bit more herbal, if you like. But then as you push forward toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you get a really nice sort of oily, there's a nice little bit of a kind of more oily floral type note out of this one, which is good. And then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So really quite nice actually. The green component on this one, I think it feels like it's maybe cryo or incognito or something like that. But there's not too much to say about it in that regard. So with this one, let's have a little look now at the front third of your palate then. My brain's a bit all over the place with this review just because it's quite a different style of beer, and even this is quite different to the other sour IPAs that I've had from Japanese breweries before. But let's look at that front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top. The base of that front third of your palate again is that kind of bread crusty type note, and then you've got the sort of iron brew soaked white bread and brown bread, and a wee bit of the smoother kind of wheaty and oaty kind of combination in there. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll the way out of the hops, but some of the fruity character you're getting in this one is definitely coming from the yeast. It's quite obvious when you drink this one that it's coming from the yeast as well. So at the back of that front third of your palate, it's got this kind of, there's quite a lot of like dried apricot in this one, and that kind of forms the base of the fruity side of the beer. Then there's a lot of oily pear. There's maybe kind of like dried pineapple as well in this one, which is interesting. So pardon me. There's kind of there's a sort of dried Yeah, a lot of oily pear, dried apricot, kind of pineapple-y type notes out of this one as well. Yeah, it's kind of, it's interesting how that goes together. Maybe just behind the front tip of the tongue, there's maybe like a little touch of lime or something like that there. You know, you get those grassy esters around the front curve of the tongue. It feels like there's maybe a little bit of lime in there. Could be a bit of Motueka, something like that. So it's something like, you know, Motueka and maybe Idaho 7 or something like that. Wouldn't surprise me here, or maybe like Rakal. Or Riwaka, one of these kind of more tropical New Zealand hops. That really wouldn't surprise me with this one. But yeah, the pear, the dried apricot, pineapple and stuff like that, those are the most kind of prominent parts of the fruity flavour of this beer. But just a wee bit of lime behind the front curve of the tongue there as well. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting beer, this one. It certainly has made me think a little bit. But I think we've said everything we really can about the flavour of this beer. So let's round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, I'd say it's maybe top end and mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth in this one. It's got a big sort of slickness to it, and that's not uncommon with sour IPAs based on the ones that I've had thus far. This is definitely one of the less kind of creamy sour IPAs that I've come across, that's for sure. This one certainly does. Yeah, this one certainly does lean more toward. Yeah, it leans more toward a more slick and oily mouthfeel. IBU wise, I think this one's pretty low in terms of IBU, maybe like 20 at the absolute most. The malt, like we said, it's a wee bit of dryness underneath, a kind of smoothness in the middle, then an oily sort of creamy sweetness on top. And yeah, you've got this nice kind of oily fruity character to it as well. So yeah, the way that all of this kind of pieces together, I think, is really very, very interesting. But yeah, I think it's quite a quirky beer, this one, that's for sure, and it's different from what I've had from West Coast Brewing before. Sour IPAs can be really, really interesting. This is definitely one of the kind of sweeter and more kind of bubblegummy examples of this style that I've reviewed on the channel, but as I say, not a style that I encounter all that often. The only thing I would say with this one is, with West Coast Brewing, I would have recommended them just to call it a sour double IPA, because it's not, at least compared to what we've had from Totopia and Verteria, it's not that hazy. Their ones were a bit more kind of bready, if you like. This one's definitely more kind of bubblegummy and oily. That's an absolute certainty. But yeah, I think this has been a really, really interesting beer to try. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Mononoke Dance, an 8.5% sour double IPA from the wonderful West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan. A really interesting beer that has tested my palate, and that's what you want after 4,000 odd beer reviews. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from West Coast Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slange, Scott, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very shortly. Ciao just now.